Hi everybody and welcome back to the Helen Winder Show. This is the second part in our 4-part masterclass on the art of mindful wealth with Leisa Peterson from the Wealth Clinic. I'll hand over to you, Leisa.
Hi Helen, thank you so much for having me be part of this masterclass. So just again, we're going to talk about the art of mindful wealth today, how you can get mindful wealth. And I always like to start everything out with a meditation. So the best way to really open ourselves to these teachings is to go inside and just spend a few minutes connecting with our deepest self. So if you could take a nice deep breath and let that go. So taking a nice deep breath, letting it go, and just relaxing into your body, getting nice and centered and connected. A helpful tool for grounding is to imagine that there's a cord that begins at the center of the earth and it rises up through all of the dirt and the rock and the water and comes right below you wherever you're sitting and hooks itself right at the base of your spine. And you just feel this really nice solid connection with the earth, with your body, your feet firmly planted on the ground. And calling to mind your deepest sense of the soulful you. And one way I found that's really beautiful to open our heart is to do a bit of taking and giving practice, which can be done quite easily if you imagine that you're sitting in a chair and surrounding you in a circle are all of your loved ones. Your mother, your father, they can be living or deceased, your children, your animals, pets, your closest friends, grandparents, more distant relatives. Just connecting into them, noticing that they're sitting in this circle surrounding you. And take a moment to feel the experience of what it means for you to see how they are just like you. They experience upsets, disappointments, physical pain, mental pain, losing things that are meaningful to them, getting things that they'd rather not have to deal with. Feeling that connection that you have with these individuals. And as you feel this connection that you have to them, you can imagine that this sense of the pain and experience of suffering that they engage, that they are forced to deal with in their life is just the same as what you've dealt with. And this compassion that you feel for their situation causes their experiences of suffering to leave their body and form a black cloud that's hovering above each of them and above you. So all this pain and suffering is actually leaving their body, and you're witnessing this in the form of this black sooty smoke. And because you feel so much compassion for them and you want this feeling of suffering to be removed from their lives, you're willing to breathe this in. And when you breathe this dark sooty smoke into your body and it touches your heart and it touches this compassionate feeling you have in your heart, immediately it dissipates and fills your body with a bright white light. And this bright white light is so strong it radiates out from your body and all directions, touching each of these individuals that are surrounding you. So as you're breathing out this bright white light that represents peace and happiness. And it's filling the bodies of all the people that and your animals that are surrounding you, giving them a sense of peace. And so you breathe in more of this dark, sooty smoke. It touches your heart and immediately transfers into this bright white light that radiates out, sharing this sense of love and peace and happiness with all those that are important to you. And as it touches them, they feel a sense of relief and of peace. And again, breathing in this dark, sooty smoke until it's all gone. And again, it radiates out and touches each of them in their deepest, most soulful places. And they feel a sense of peace, serenity, relief. And just knowing that you've had this impact, this ability to help those that you care so deeply about, just through mounting this wish for others to be free from their suffering, this compassionate desire to be helpful to those who you care most about, fills you with this sense of peace. Just taking a moment to just feel this sense of peace and serenity. And love. Even noticing smiles on their faces. Perhaps they're touching their heart and extending this feeling of love back to you as you look into their eyes. And with this sense of love and peace, you just kindly bow to each of these individuals who have become present for this experience, thanking them for being here, for sharing this loving experience with you. And you wish them well in their journeys. And feel a sense of joy and reciprocity as they extend that same back to you. Another nice deep breath. You can let that go and open your eyes if you close them. I found that when we can open our hearts, whenever we're talking about money, it really helps us to receive information that we're ready to receive, and it keeps some of the gunk that we've built up that we're holding on to from stopping that reception. And so thinking about money as a clue to finding greater levels of happiness in our life, I love this picture because it feels like when we dive into the topic of money and mindful wealth, it's really like the tip of the subconscious iceberg. We see things in our lives as it pertains to money, and we think that that's all there is. But in reality, there's so much more under the surface. And the work that I do is really about looking at the iceberg that's showing, right? Looking at that, but using that experience to dive deeper into understanding what's really going on in our subconscious, our unconscious, what's going on beneath the surface that's actually creating this top layer that's surfacing. we think that the world is out there and we've got to kind of manipulate and work with the world out there in our lives. But in reality, it all starts from inside of us and radiates out. And I know that's a lifelong lesson for many of us to absorb and to apply into our own lives. But I've seen it for the past 16 years that when I focus my time and energy on just changing the external world, it seems to just come up over and over and over again, the same things. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah. I fully connect with what you're saying there.
And instead, I've spent this, past 16 years retraining myself to realize that those things that I tried to change on the outside were not having the lasting impact that I was looking for. Because when we deal with something, right, when we change something, we want it to stick. We want it to stay. We don't want it to be fleeting. But I've found that the external world, us just changing that and not changing the things that are going on inside of us, doesn't stick. And we're just back to the same place that we started in the first, in the beginning of the journey. And that's really frustrating. And I think that's why people get really burnt out about life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, really do. And it's like the sticky notes, if you like, and the things that we want to change, they blow off so easily, but it's got to come from within first.
Yeah. And in my case, money was really tough when I was growing up. And it inspired me to start working at a young age. And I really did connect this idea that if I had a lot of money, I would be safe and everything would be okay. Like I'd be in control of my life. So I got really good at making money. But the problem with that, and I didn't realize this for many years later, of course, is just like a lot of people, especially I think in the West, my obsession with making money started overshadowing my life. And I worked a lot. I was consumed by this idea that I needed to make more money. I needed to be successful in my career. I needed to be better than other people. I needed to, stand out and just on and on and on. This idea that was very heavy in this idea of separation, like I needed to be separate from the pack because that was going to help me to make lots of money. And these were things that I had adopted from the culture we live in and the TV programs that I grew up watching, and all these different bits of information that come in, and we decide how to assemble those based on our own situation in life. But the main point is that money overshadowed my life, and I was not in control of it. It was in control of me.
Yeah.
Until one day, tragedy struck, and I found myself facing a horrific family crisis that in just a matter of a few days caused me to question every single thing in my life, my career and especially how hard I had been working. I questioned things about my family and my relationship with my family. I questioned myself and who was I, because I think I saw in that tragedy that I was not a happy person, that I had been doing a really good job of making life look good on the outside, but inside there was not a lot of resiliency. There wasn't a lot of love. There was a lot of like, I want this and I want it now, kind of like a spoiled child is the way I look at it back. And that was when I was about 32 years old, so I wasn't, a teenager, but that's definitely deep inside how I feel like I was living my life. And when I came out of this darkness, of this shaking up experience, all of a sudden I had a passion. I had a passion in learning some things. One was how to meditate and gain some control over my mind. I had enough sense that that might be a way to help me. The other was to slowly but surely get disentangled with this thing called money. And I don't even think I understood that at the time. I just sensed that it was in control of my life, but I wasn't ready to actually do anything different because that's all I knew. So since then, I started realizing that money caused a great deal of pain for myself and also in the world, and that it also doesn't have to be that way, and that if we can step back and look more deeply into how money is showing up, then we can learn a great deal about ourselves and thinking about money as a clue, like I said, to finding greater levels of happiness, just like referencing in this iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
I learned that when we're not dealing with money, we're not dealing with our life. And whether that be mentally and physically avoiding it, using it as an excuse, sometimes as a weapon to hurt ourselves and others, or we use it as a validation of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those things are really not what money is about. But because we do it this way, we cause a lot of stress for ourselves, for our others, for the world. We do a lot of things that don't make sense when you step back and look at them. Like, nobody would want to destroy the planet, for example, in the pursuit of money. Like, no one's going to say, I want to do that. The problem is that we get so, possessed by this pursuit of money that we don't pay attention to other things that would seem really obvious, perhaps to another person, and, or to our higher self, if we listen to it, right?
Yeah.
This intuitive voice.
Mm-hmm.
And probably all of us share the thought that money isn't supposed to be used that way, that it's just a currency, it's a form of energy. I love to think of it as a form of energy that's symbolic of giving and receiving, kind of like a circle of just giving to others and receiving, and tied into the value that we're providing to the world. Now, of course, if you're inheriting money, it's a different story, right? Because you haven't necessarily earned that money, which actually does create a whole bunch of other challenges for people in those situations.
Yeah.
But this is about people like us, right, that have to earn our living, to pay for the food on our table. It can become this very symbolic experience of giving and receiving, and the value that we provide to the world comes back to us in the form of currency.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've seen is that before, one of the things that can really help us to develop mindful wealth, getting into the topic of today's conversation, is to understand, well, what blocks us? If money is this very natural experience, kind of like, if you see a flower, on the ground and it's sucking up the moisture and the sunlight and it's just thriving in that environment. I love thinking about a flower and the way that a flower grows. I do feel like human life is meant to be similar to that flower experience. Not this heaviness, like I've got to go out and I've got to, work so hard, work myself to death to have the money come in. Very different. The flower isn't experiencing life that way, and I question whether human beings have to experience life that way. But one of the reasons I think, just in this time of consciousness, of where we're living, of what's happening, I found that a big reason that we don't have that wealth, that we're not like the flower, is because of fears that we hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was first holding this thought that there's fear, but there's really so much more going on with life, that there's really this beautiful, what I call inner power within each of us to generate the things that we need, at the most opportune moment that we need them, as opposed to feeling like there's lack and scarcity in the world. And what came to me was this beautiful picture that I've got on the screen now, The Journey Within, which talks about this life journey that we have, and how do we touch into this wealth within each of us. And the way I describe this is that, kind of, if you think of this as similar to our life journey, so on the external part of the spiral, I've written who we think we are. Mm-hmm. And when we're, young and we've not gone through a lot of difficulty and tragedy, we typically think that we are who, where we're born, how much money we have, the comfort that we have, with our parents, the life that they give us, the way that we look, how athletic we are. There's all these things in the external world, radiating out from our body, that we get really attached to, this idea that this is who I am. And so, that may be great if you're born into a, wealthy family. You're like, yeah, I'm rich and I'm always going to be rich, and that often happens. Your belief system is that you're born a certain way, so that's how it's going to work. And not that that solves all your problems, but just when you're thinking about money, we get so attached. So on the flip side, if we're born into poverty, we get really attached to this idea, even though we don't know it's happening, that that's our story. I'm poor, and I'm going to be poor for the rest of my life. And so when I talk about who we think we are, we have this, outer shell that is totally based on wherever we end up in life. And if we stay there, chances are whatever beliefs, whatever experiences we were exposed to young in life are going to continue to play out for the rest of our lives. Does that make sense?
That certainly does, yeah.
That's who we think we are.
Yeah.
However, tragedy strikes, or difficulties, or physical pain in our body, or different things happen. Like for me, it was this family tragedy. And all of a sudden, like I said, I started to question who I thought I was. And as soon as I started to question that, I started to go within my soul, if you want to call it that, into this spiral journey of trying to understand, well, wait a minute, if I'm who I grew up being, and that's the rest of my life, then what's the point of even living? Because I know that story, and that story is not all that interesting to me anymore. There was a lot of pain and suffering in that story. I'd like to check out of that one. And so by going inside and starting to say, well, who's in there? What is in there? There seems to be something more, and sometimes people refer to this as the void. It's like there's this void of understanding where we just don't know. And no matter what religion you were raised in, no matter what, personal experience is more valuable in understanding this journey than any book you read, than any doctrine you're kind of given from a young age. Like, you have to experience it. So when you go inside and you start asking questions about who am I actually, what happens inevitably is we run up against our fears. And these fears can be big. And for some people, the minute they hit this section where it says who we are afraid we are, they run back to the safety of their comfort zone, which is who they think they are, and that's fine. And they're going to stay there for the rest of their life. They're like, I am not going to face fear. For others of us, you and I probably come to mind, we're like, that wasn't that great anyways. I'm staying here, and I'm going to look into my fears. I'm going to understand what these fears are about, and I'm not going to push myself too much. I'm going to go at my own pace. This is nobody else's agenda but my own. But what I've seen is that in the midst of those fears, money gets very wrapped up into these fear stories. So one is lack and scarcity, that there isn't enough to go around, and that somehow I'm going to end up as a bag lady pushing a shopping cart. This crazy fear that over 50% of women, right, in North America have this fear. So money gets wrapped up in our relationships. It gets wrapped up in the work that we do. It really touches every single aspect of our lives, the homes that we buy, what we put inside of our homes, the cars that we drive. Everything is connected to money. So when we start looking into our fears, inevitably things are going to start coming up that have to be healed, that we need to understand. What is it, and how do I let it go? And the work I do is using these kind of funny experiences with money, because I call them funny and silly when you're able to look back at them. Like, why do I have a tendency to always buy things on debt and have a problem of accumulating debt? Like, that's not natural. The flower has no debt, nor should we, in my opinion. Debt can be used positively, but in limited quantities, maybe for your home, for example. Everything else, it's like we really can, as human beings, make enough money to wait and pay for things. There's always other options. We don't see them at the time, but there typically are other options to keep our debt very, very low, and the goal to get out of it. But when we look inside and we say, well, wait a minute, this debt isn't going away, and it causes me a great deal of suffering. What's going on here? Why am I not finding a way around this debt? for example, overspending, under-earning. Under-earning is very profound. We can learn so much about ourselves by diving into, why do I always have a tendency to be paid less than everybody else that I work with, for example, which is probably common for some people.
Yeah.
So using those experiences to dive in and understand what's going on ultimately allows them to be let go of and to be opened to the possibility that I don't have to under-earn for the rest of my life. I don't have to be in debt for the rest of my life. I made a conscious decision when I was starting meditation, actually, because as I sat in meditation practice, and I did a lot of it, and I looked inside, I saw things like, yeah, I don't want to have debt. I don't want to have debt. I saw that. I didn't like it. I didn't feel like it was something that was serving me. I want freedom. Debt means I have an extra bill that I have to pay every month that has nothing to do with going the future, right? I want freedom in the future is what I said. So guess what? From 2006, I think our family had a net worth of about $60,000 in 1998. This tragedy happened in 1999, and I began meditating, and I began studying these practices and getting really centered on what I wanted. And one of them was, I want no debt. That was a big thing that stuck out in my mind. By 2006, so not that long, 8 years, my husband and I were almost multimillionaires and had no debt whatsoever. And I am not somebody, I'm not the exceptional, person who there's nothing exceptional about, the things that I did. I just worked hard, and I knew exactly what I wanted to achieve. And so that was an example of me moving through that block. Yeah, I had been raised with my parents, had a lot of debt. Debt was always stressful in our home. We lost our homes. We lost our cars because of debt. So I made a conscious decision. I didn't want to live that way, and voila. I did everything that I could to create a business that provided, I didn't know it was going to happen that fast. I didn't know it was going to work, but I knew what my goal was. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. What we have to do is we have to almost welcome what we fear to be able to say hello and move past it, because the more we keep moving it backwards and being who we perceive ourselves to be, and almost what we have been told we are supposed to be, you're never going to move forward.
Definitely. And that I love funny sayings like, where there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
Our willpower is very awesome. It's a huge part of being human, and we can either use that willpower to play, right? Just play, spend life playing, and not thinking at a deeper level, how do I take care of my whole self? Some people are very drawn to, playing as much as possible in life, and there's nothing wrong with that in balance, because there's also this fact that this body does get old. There are things that change in our life. Our priorities change. Later in life, there's a good chance we're going to want to be spending more time with our loved ones than working our butts off. So that balance of playing today and also thinking about the future, it's always the middle path that I'm striving for. It's never extremes. It's never about hoarding lots and lots of money. It's never about giving it all away and not thinking that you matter. Some people do that, and that's their journey. I'm not one to judge, but there is, for the average folk like us, there's a interest in taking care of ourselves and noticing when we're not taking care of ourselves. And we're giving things away without concern, but we're not often doing it for the selfless Mother Teresa reasons. We're doing it for reasons like, I want to be seen as a giving person. I want to be appreciated at a deeper level than I am today. So I'm going to give everything away. And that will bring what I seek. But again, that's back to that external,
Yeah.
way of living life.
Yeah.
It's not about, because the other part of this and where we're really headed with this journey is as we move through the fears and we move through these blocks that keep us from seeing who we really are at the center. Who we really are is this being of love.
Mm.
Pure and simple. Fear does not exist in who we really are. It feels really, really real, but it's not true. But until we go through the fears and we see that we can leave them behind, that they don't have to control us anymore,
Yeah.
and in its place we fill that space with love, our life changes dramatically. Dramatically. So this is how I use this picture to explain some very esoteric concepts, with the idea being, that we're moving into this place of understanding ourselves, and it's really beautiful, which I think leads to, our next part of the conversation.
Absolutely, yeah, which is going to be the keys to developing mindful wealth. And I think we have to understand and know ourselves first before we can get to that point.
Yes, yes. And that's why I love meditation and mindfulness practice is, at the end of the day, no one can do this work for you. You have to do it for yourself. And so, I've never been to a therapist. I know that they help people a lot. But my goal when I work with my clients is teaching them the tools so that they can do this work on their own.
Yeah.
And have it regular practice of looking inside and saying, what is pokey today? What's causing me anxiety? What's causing me discomfort? What's causing me suffering? And then using that as a breadcrumb trail to understand the thing that's ready to shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we get frustrated with something. Quite often it's not the thing that we're getting frustrated with, but something inside. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's so true.
Yeah. Really interesting, because I have to say I really resonated with everything you just explained, and I'm sure many of our listeners will certainly be feeling exactly the same.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to share this stuff that feels like my life's work with you.
And sometimes we have to do these things to help others, don't we?
It's wonderful. It's the joy of life, in my opinion, to be able to figure things out and then share that,
Absolutely.
if it's helped you a lot.
Definitely, definitely. And I know for a fact that it is definitely going to be helping our listeners. So thank you so much, Leisa, for sharing how you can get mindful wealth.
Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to the next one, which you can tune into next week, Keys to Developing Mindful Wealth. This will be available along with all the other parts of the Masterclass with Leisa on the website, www.thehelenwindershow.com. There'll also be a little form on there, so you can, if you've got any questions at any point, just complete it, and Leisa and I will be more than happy to assist you. Don't forget to hop over to Leisa's website as well. You can see it on the screen at the moment. It is www.wealthclinic.com, or you can join her on Twitter, which is the Wealth Clinic. And obviously, any questions, please do let us know, and we'll see you next week with Keys to Developing Mindful Wealth. Thanks, Leisa.
Thank you.